I have such big dreams, but I also want to enjoy today just as it is. Join me for 5 minutes of learning from some famous, passionate people about how to achieve both. Welcome to 5 Minute Spirituality, a look at how the great spiritual masters help you enjoy and thrive in your life right now. Not long ago, I was in a group that was praying and meditating about what we should be doing with our lives. And we began by meditating on a psalm which felt encouraging along those lines, like maybe we could relax and trust that as we got still, we could believe that God would absolutely take us someplace great. Psalm 32:8 says, "I will instruct you and teach you in the way you should go. I, meaning God, will counsel you with my loving eye on you." It's a promise from God, all taken care of. When we were done with 20 minutes of meditation and prayer about this and we're checking in, a mother of young children told us about an encouraging vision she'd had during the time. Her life, again mostly spent caring for these young children, appeared to her as a river. She could either stand up and try to stop the river or let the energy of the river do the work in carrying her along as she says yes to it. I wonder what you think about that. Is there some sort of flow from God and it's just your job to find your way into it and let God do the work? Or do you need to be kicking yourself in the butt, as it were, to keep your dreams alive? This fits into what Christians historically call calling. As someone who's spoken about finding your calling a whole lot, it now seems to me it's a little bit of a fraught concept. Of course, it's great to think that God has a plan for our lives and there's a great task for us to do. Ideally, one we might even like and be good at. So 3 cheers for that. And having gone through all the pressure in adolescence of what will you do when you grow up, for most of us, an unanswerable and usually unpleasant question, it's nice to think that God will guide us into this. But there's the pressure as we get older of decreasingly believing that there's only one great calling for us, and having gone through our share of disappointments and setbacks that can make us skeptical. There's also a moralistic pressure on this, as if there's one thing we should be about, or we've missed what God wants for us. So how do we get the good part of that, while perhaps dialing back on the challenging part? Some contemplatives have taken up this challenge by turning to a Hindu word, dharma, one of many uses of this word. My wife Grace, whom you met earlier on these videos, by and large prefers to stick, as perhaps you do if you're a churchgoer, with Christian spiritual terms. But she, hearing about dharma, said, okay, that is more helpful, so see what you think. This dharma idea diminishes the moralistic pressure and turns us more towards the sense of finding the right fit for us or finding the key that turns the lock. And it's fun to think that maybe there's a path to who we really are. These contemplatives tell us that as we look to discover our dharma, there are 2 poles to avoid, grandiosity and despair, and I can relate to both. I find that I either want to be colossally successful and recognized that way, or I despair that I'll ever do anything that matters at all. Instead, what we're looking for is what they call our right-sized dharma. In this spirit, I've been encouraged thinking about the monk and writer Thomas Merton and Walden Pond guy Henry David Thoreau. They have aspects of their stories in common. Both of them wanted to be great, famous writers. They had grandiose dreams. And they both went to New York to hang out with famous writers and try to join them. But in each case, they failed and left in discouragement. And they both decided that their right-sized dharma was to go into very small spaces. Merton went into a hermit's little solitary room, and Thoreau famously went to his cabin at Walden Pond. And writing about what they discovered in their tiny spaces, in their cases, they actually did become world famous, more than they ever could have dreamed of if things had gone better hanging out with the famous writers. Here are some tips these thinkers give for dreaming of experiencing your dharma. First, enjoy God's still, small voice. In the stillness of the contemplative practice we've described here, see if God will speak to you as he did to Elijah and to my mom friend who I mentioned at the start of this video. In the stillness, will he instruct you and teach you the way you should go? Second, pray to gain the position on your dharma. As we talked about in the last video, chat with God. Let God know what's on your heart and see how God responds. Third, go for it, but leave the outcome to God. These contemplatives lean into the kind of innocence that would encourage you to dive heedlessly into the passions that come out of this. But then they're very big on letting go of the outcomes, which seems like a surprise. I mean, most of us want our lives to work out. But there's power here, that our Dharma is something worth pursuing whatever happens. So Grace and I left a life of being prominent people in our small pond to pursuing the Dharma God seems to have laid before us, to explore a Jesus-based path that might help many people in a changing religious landscape, but which is entirely uncharted, which could lead nowhere and lead us without many of the delightful perks we once enjoyed. Fourth, keep two things in mind: intention and joyful presence. Intention, that's what you're dreaming for. And joyful presence is, as a growing contemplative, being entirely joyfully present to your current reality. Both. This is at the heart of everything we've been talking about. So I've led a group that I've had lots of hope for, that I've dreamed might connect with thousands of people. So while risking being grandiose, there's an intention, right? That's a good thing in this view. And then, when I meet with a particular actual group that might be a few dozen people, my opportunity is to fully, joyfully experience it, to be completely alive to what it is. Both intention and joyful presence. Do you see the power in this? Spiritually speaking, this is the sweet spot where dreaming can live happily with living. When you get these mystics on this topic, they're shockingly cheery. They seem to think that most real growth into our Dharma, contrary to everything we've ever believed, is in many ways easy. One of them writes, "Pain is not the parent of peace. You've been taught that if you're not busting your butt, you are a slacker. No pain, no gain." They continue, "Joy is not the result of struggle. Joy is the result of choosing joy." How do we discover this ease in all of this? Well, we meditate, we do centering prayer, we find out what's actually in our hearts, and then we go for it, choosing joy for all of its vulnerabilities. It's the vision of the river that we started with. Relax into it and trust God for the outcome and see where it takes you. Join me next time as we troubleshoot common problems for people, like sometimes me, for instance, who see the value in this sort of spirituality but feel bad at it. And if you enjoy 5-Minute Spirituality, you might also enjoy a lively weekly podcast on these things called Journey On with Dave Smelser. And I also host a vibrant online group on this stuff each week with people from all over. To learn more, shoot us an email. See you soon.